sneaks through center, keeps his leg drive going, and goes down to about the 3-yard line. Iowa leading 14-0. The Spartans have a break here as Hollis fumbles and Hudis recovers by Michigan State on the Spartan 2. In the third quarter, now, as we start the third quarter, Kemmeling, a soccer player, kicks to Morin on the 6, and Jerry returns it to the Iowa 39, where he's down by Albrecht. Iowa still leading in this ball game, 14-0, with the 1st and 10 on the Hawkeye 39. Ferguson moves to his right, gets behind blocking by Joe Williams, clears himself at the sideline, and scrambles for 24 yards for the Hawkeyes. The Spartans, later in the ball game, went ahead. Adderley doesn't quite make it. He stopped a little bit short of the goal line. And then with a 3rd and goal on the Iowa 2, Sharon dives over center for the touchdown. Brandstatter is now in action, and if he makes his point, the Spartans will lead the Hawkeyes. It's all knotted up 14-14. The left footer gets his kick away. It's good, and Iowa is 14, Michigan State 15, 4:49 to play. With a 2nd and 3 to go on the Iowa 38, Williams fumbles, and Clark recovers for Michigan State on the Iowa 38. And now watch this sensational heads-up play by the Hawkeyes. Williams catches Wilson's fumble in midair and streaks 67 yards for an Iowa touchdown. A tremendous break, and the Hawkeyes took advantage of it. Hollis' pass to Williams was incomplete for the conversion points, and Iowa led 20-15. And now Wilson, desperately trying to get the Spartans back, lofts a high one, but the brilliant Bernie Wyatt intercepts on the 36-yard line. And with a clinching play, Wilburn Hollis is through the middle. He stopped briefly, picks his leg action up, and streaks into the end zone, 23 yards and a touchdown. Moore kicked the extra point, and it was Iowa 27, Michigan State 15. Well, Evie and Duffy shake hands after the sensational win for the Hawks, and on the plane ride home, the Hawks and coaches were still talking about the big break that won the game. It wasn't all luck, and the young gold and black were now deeply entrenched as the contender and certainly one of the favorites for the Big Ten title. Well, back home to the friendly confines of Iowa Stadium, Coach Evie sends his undefeated Hawkeyes against the also unbeaten Badgers of Wisconsin. The Big Ten champions were not expected to have much, but with 3 wins under their belt, they flew into Iowa with fire in their eyes and a hope for a win over Iowa before a regionally televised football classic. Little did the fans realize they were in for a rare treat and one of the most thrilling games of the 1960 season. Wisconsin scored early and led 7-0, and then in the second quarter, Hollis fires to Perkins to start things going. A couple of plays later, with a 2nd and 7 on the Wisconsin 18, Larry Ferguson counters through the middle and legs it into the end zone for an Iowa touchdown. Hollis held, Moore kicked the extra point, and it was Iowa 7, Wisconsin 7. It remained that way at the half. In the third quarter, Wilburn Hollis scoots for 10 yards around the right and finally driven out of bounds on the far side of the field. And a worried Coach Evashevsky on the sideline looks the situation over. It's a tough game with these Badgers. Hollis slips around left end, fakes a pitch out, and then legs it into the end zone, 31 yards away for an Iowa touchdown. This is Wilburn Hollis of Iowa. Hollis held, Moore kicked the point, and Iowa led 14-7. With a 1st and 10 on the Wisconsin 41, Miller goes back to pass, fires down the field. It's intercepted by Robinson, who returns it 11 yards. We're now in the fourth quarter in the game with Wisconsin. It is Wilburn Hollis in action once again. Number 20 fakes a handoff, rolls to his left, fires. Receiving is Winston, and the overall pickup is 29 yards. This is Jim Winston on a pass from Wilburn Hollis. And now Wilburn Hollis in action, fakes a handoff to Williams, fakes a pitch out, and then angles into the end zone for another Iowa touchdown. That made it Iowa 21, Wisconsin 7. Later, Wisconsin trailed by 2 points after their third TD, and then Ron Miller brilliantly hits Richter in the end zone for a 2-point conversion, and our ball game is all knotted up. With a 4th and 7 on the Wisconsin 41-yard line, in possession of the Badgers, and the game tied, Richter punts to Ferguson. And watch Ferguson return this punt deep into Wisconsin territory. He's at the 30, the 40, at the midfield stripe, spins, almost keeps his leg up, and scrambles for 39 yards. And now seconds remain. Hollis is back in the pocket, gets pretty good protection, lofts a high one down the field. Ferguson is there. Touchdown, Iowa. But it doesn't count. Iowa was offside. Let's try it again. Harris is in at halfback. Hollis back in the pocket. He spots Sammy, throws a high one. The defender is there. They fight for it, and Sammy takes it for the winning Iowa touchdown, and Iowa won 28-21 in a thriller. Well, this will go down as the thriller of the season. Also, the Badgers were never better than on this day, and it took a clutch play, Hollis to Harris, to get the win for Iowa. So Iowa's Hawks remain unbeaten after 4 games. They've surprised all but their coaches, and maybe they've surprised them too. Old Capitol and homecoming. With homecoming came the upstart Purdue Boilermakers, winners over the powerful Buckeyes of Ohio State 24-21, and losers only to pass-minded Wisconsin. The Hawks now are rated #1 in the nation. The pageantry of a Big Ten football game is unmatched, and Purdue's Silver Twins and the terrific Iowa band quickly get the sellout crowd in the mood for the thriller to follow. Purdue's stunning attack had earlier pinned a 51-19 defeat on Notre Dame, giving notice of a potent scoring machine. There was no score in the first quarter, and now with a 2nd and 6 on the Purdue 21, Hollis fakes the pass, does some fancy leg work, and then moves for 20 yards down the far side of the field and finally driven out of bounds just short of a touchdown. With a 1st and goal on the Purdue 1, Hollis sneaks into the end zone, and Iowa leads 6-0. Moore's extra point is good, and the Hawks are 7-0 out in front. With a 3rd and 4 on the Iowa 42, Wilburn Hollis is back, fires a pass out on the flat to Morin. He gets behind blocking and finally picks up 19 yards down to the Purdue 32-yard line. With a 3rd and 3 situation for Purdue, as we reverse sides, Allen completes to Harris for 15 yards. And now this sets up the play that was perhaps along with Williams' run at Michigan State, one of the great plays of the year. Allen is hit, fumbles. Perry picks it up in midair. Dayton Perry, a sophomore center for Iowa, and legs it 80 yards for a touchdown. Dayton Perry is the only center in Iowa history to have scored a touchdown. What a thrill for this sophomore. Iowa led now 14-0 in the 3rd quarter. Morin gets behind blocking and rambles for 19 yards against Purdue. It's the 1st and goal a little bit later on the Purdue 6-yard line when Wilburn Hollis rolls out of his familiar quarterback spot and then outspeeds the defending Boilermakers into the end zone for a touchdown. Hollis held, Moore kicked the point, and the Hawks led 21-0, but there was more to come. Harris, a little bit later, gets the Hawks out of a tremendous jam with a beautiful 29-yard sprint. In the interim, Purdue had fired for 2 touchdowns. The Hawk lead was just 21-14. And now with the 3rd and 10 on the Purdue 26, Hollis passes. It's intercepted by Tiller, and Tiller returns it about 17 yards. A later passing attack was halted by the clock, and the Hawks won this thriller 21-14. Yes, once again, the fans were thrilled and weak with exhaustion. As for the 3rd week in a row, Iowa had pulled out a spine-tingling win. This gave the Hawks their 5th straight win and was the 7th straight game in which an Evashevsky-coached team had scored. 70 straight games. A top-rated 11 from Lawrence, Kansas flew into Iowa City to battle the #1 ranked Hawkeyes. Kansas University, once beaten by then #1 Syracuse and future winners of the Big 8 Conference. The speed of the Jayhawks was not just on paper, as they proved later to be a foe of tremendous talent. Iowa had just finished 4 Big Ten struggles in a row, and the embattled Hawks were out to protect their rating and keep their undefeated string going, but Kansas had an upset in mind. In the first quarter, Jerry Morin slips around left end, cuts in, and picks up about 6 yards. With a 2nd and 4 on the Kansas 30, Wilburn Hollis, showing his speed and versatility, slips out around right end, outruns a Kansas secondary, and into the end zone, 30 yards away for an Iowa touchdown. Moore's point was good, and Iowa led 7-0. Here is a defensive play for the Hawkeyes. Hadel is back to punt, but he loses 6 yards, attempting to get the kick away. And now with a 2nd and goal on the Kansas 3 after that defensive play, Ferguson hurls his way into the end zone for the Iowa touchdown. Iowa then led a little later 14-0. In the third quarter with a 1st and 10, Morin slips over left guard for 8 yards. Kansas was penalized half the distance, and with a 2nd and 1 on the Kansas 2, Wilburn Hollis rolls over the top into the end zone, and Iowa led 21-0. Well, the Jayhawks scored late to make it 21-7. And in the fourth quarter, Hadel takes a lateral pass, watch it thrown, and throws deep to Spurney in the end zone. But defensive work in the end zone makes it an incompleted forward pass. And in the final play of the game, Matt Saccone is back in the pocket, throws to Robinson, and Robinson picks up 16 yards on the play. It was Iowa 21, Kansas 7. A tremendous effort by the Kansas team, but after the tumult and the shouting, the University of Iowa Hawkeyes were still unbeaten and still the #1 team in the nation, and had run their consecutive scoring streak to 71. It was now all aboard for Minnesota. Well, you couldn't find a seat in Minneapolis the week of this big one, and if you did have a pair of tickets, you were a privileged individual. Yes, this was the game of the year. 2 undefeated football powerhouses meeting head-on for the #1 rating, and an Iowa win would cinch a share of the Big Ten title. The Golden Gophers had held their opponents to a minimum, and the powerful Hawkeyes' running game had been unstoppable. Perfect football weather greeted the packed stands and the eager Hawkeyes and Gophers. Who would win it? Well, let's watch action in the Iowa-Minnesota football game. The Gophers led early 7-0. With a 2nd and 5 on the Iowa 30, Ferguson breaks through the hole to the left side of the line, rambles for 21 yards, and a 1st down for the Hawkeyes. At the Minnesota 49, with Iowa in possession of a 1st down, once again, Larry Ferguson rambles off tackle and gets 11. A little bit later, with a 3rd and 6 on the Gopher 34, once again, Larry Ferguson rambles for a 1st down, and he's finally stopped by Stevens on a beautiful tackle, but it's a 16-yard gain for Larry. It's 4th and 12 on the Gopher 20, when Matt Saccone, in at quarterback, spots Felton Rogers and hits him on a clutch play for 14 yards and a 1st down. The Hawk attack was stalled, and the Hawkeyes are going to try for a field goal. So Tom Moore will kick from that position on the field. Hollis held, and Tom Moore's kick was a 28-yard field goal, and at this stage, Minnesota led 7-3. In the third quarter, with a 2nd and 10 on the Gopher 40, on a reverse, Larry Ferguson picks up 19 yards and an Iowa 1st down. 2nd and 9 on the Gopher 20, when Joe Williams finally gets into the scoring column and racks up a touchdown for the Hawkeyes. Watch him run 20 yards for an Iowa touchdown. Well, Tom Moore's kick was good, and Iowa led briefly 10-7. But Minnesota regained the lead 27-10, and the final score for the Golden Gophers, that was a 21-10 lead. Salem makes it 27-10 with that quarterback sneak. Matt Saccone moves out in the flat, fires to Rogers, and the pickup is 9 yards. With a 4th and 1 on the Iowa 20, and the final gasp for the Iowa Hawkeyes, Robinson runs for 28 yards as the game ends. And the Golden Gophers on the big one were hot this day, winning 27-10. The Gophers won the big one, and now the Hawks were faced with a must-win over Ohio State. There were breaks galore in this one. The Gophers capitalized on theirs. The Hawks were unable to do so. A fast-finishing 4th quarter by Minnesota was too much, and the inspired play of the Gophers was the deciding factor. The Hawks and fans were disappointed, but not dead by any means. Well, this was to be Iowa's last home game for their coach Evie, and the band saluted the great leader with a formation on the field. This was also Dad's Day, as the proud fathers were on the sideline to watch their sons in action against one of the great teams in the nation. A share of the Big Ten crown would go to the winner, and this traditional struggle with the Buckeyes would go down as the best effort of the year for Iowa's brilliant Hawkeyes. Could they stop Ferguson and Matty? The Hawks thought they could. Into action in the first quarter. Once again, brilliant Wilburn Hollis sprints for 16 yards around right end to get the offense going. And with a 1st and 10 on the Buckeye 48, electrifying run by Joe Williams. He's through the middle, cuts to his left, and then legs it into the end zone for a 48-yard touchdown run by sophomore Joe Williams of Rahway, New Jersey. The extra point by Moore was good, and the Hawks led 7-0. The Buckeyes came back to score. Now it's Iowa again. Hollis passing to Mosley. The pickup is 15 yards for Gene. And now with a 2nd and 9 on the Buckeye 12, Wilburn Hollis gets behind Mosley and Ferguson and into the end zone for another Iowa touchdown. And with the extra point conversion, it was 14-6. Now with a 4th and 4 on the Buckeye 28, Matty punts to Ferguson. And Ferguson very quickly stabs the bounce and rambles for 24 yards down the sidelines. He could have gone further, but he had stepped out of bounds. With a 1st and 10 on the Buckeye 42, Larry Ferguson once again scrambles over right tackle, and watch him go for 25 big yards against the Buckeyes. It's 2nd and goal down on the Buckeye 1 a few moments later. So Saccone escorts the football into the end zone, and with the extra point, it was Iowa 21 and the Buckeyes 6. 1st and 10 on Ohio State 39 a little bit later. Saccone passes, and he hits Ferguson. The pickup is 16 yards. It's 1st and 10 on the Buckeye 23. Saccone, the sophomore from Pennsylvania, in again, hits Rogers for 21 yards, almost into the end zone. With a 1st and goal now on the Buckeye 2 after a penalty, Saccone racks the end zone marker. Well, he's just a little bit short on this one. So Matt Saccone has Joe Williams angled to the left, and he's into the end zone for the touchdown. And with Saccone holding, Moore's extra point was good, and Iowa led 28-6. In the 4th quarter, it's 2nd and 9 on the Iowa 9, and watch this brilliant 91-yard touchdown run by Larry Ferguson. Stopped by the linebackers momentarily. He breaks loose at the midfield stripe. He's contested. A stiff arm clears him, and Larry Ferguson, with the longest touchdown run of the year in Big Ten, 91 yards against Ohio State. Hollis holds, and Moore's extra point is good. The colorful Woody Hayes had only good things to say later about the Hawkeyes. Yes, the Hawks assured themselves a share of the Big Ten title with this great win, as the Hawks displayed their finest performance to date. At Evie's home finale, the great coach was carried from the field by the happy squad who played sensationally before the national television audience. Some call this the best game of Evie's career at Iowa. Next, the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. Contrasting records were displayed at South Bend, where Iowa was 7-1, Notre Dame won 7. With national ranking at stake and another brilliant season to protect, the Gold and Black were determined that Evie would go out a winner. It was a beautiful football day, and the setting was perfect. Iowa also had one ear cocked on reports of the Minnesota-Wisconsin game at Madison. A Badger win would give the title to Iowa, but later reports showed Minnesota over Wisconsin. Well, let's get into the ball game. Hollis, early in the ball game, hits Rogers on a clutch play for 11 and a first down on the Irish 16-yard line. Joe Williams then slashes over left tackle, watch the Rahway bullet go at an angle and into the Notre Dame end zone for the touchdown. Iowa led then 7-0. In the second quarter, speedy Sammy Harris, called Mercury by his teammates, caught the Irish flat-footed and watched Sammy move for 34 yards to the Notre Dame 28, where LaMonica finally shoved him out of bounds. A little bit later, Matt Saccone, brilliant sophomore quarterback for the Hawkeyes, goes back in the pocket, gets blocking, lofts a beautiful pass, taken by Bill Whistler of Yankton, South Dakota, in the end zone for another Iowa touchdown. Both kicks were good. Iowa had a 2-touchdown lead. This time Hollis is back, spots Ferguson out in the flat, and the Hollis to Ferguson combination picks up 21 yards and a first down. Still air-minded, Wilburn Hollis moves to the air once again, fires down the field. This time it's Felton Rogers picking it up inside the 5, just as the third quarter ended. In the fourth quarter, Wilburn Hollis takes things in his own hand and slips into the Notre Dame end zone for the Hawkeye touchdown, and a little bit later, to show the versatility of this Hawkeye defense, DeCindio and Humphrey throw Hafner for a 13-yard loss. Then with 4th and 23 to go, Dayton Perry moves in against the blue and gold of Notre Dame and gets quarterback Hafner for a 10-yard loss, and Iowa took over on the Hawkeye 43-yard line. And with the finest run of the day, Mosley, number 32, gets a handoff from Saccone, finds no opening, skirts wide. It looks as if he might be out of bounds here, but he isn't, and rambles for 36 yards to the Irish 20, where he was finally caught by 3 Notre Dame tacklers. Mosley bucks for 2, and then plunges for the Iowa touchdown. Well, Iowa had it this day. Even though the Irish were sky high, Iowa was able to exploit most Notre Dame errors to their advantage, and they were stingy on defense, holding Notre Dame to a total of 95 yards. And now let's meet the seniors. Jerry Morin, captain from Wyandotte, Michigan. Mark Manders, Des Moines, guard. Tackle Charlie Lee out Fair Oaks, California way. A fine defensive back, Don Tucker. Outstanding fullback, Gene Mosley. And a law student from Chicago, Lloyd Humphreys. Also not pictured, Tom Moore and Bill Ringer. Now let's meet the staff. Olin Treadway on the left, freshman assistant. Billy Happel, freshman coach from Cedar Rapids on the staff. Jerry Hilgenberg, former All-American. Archie Kodris, head coach Evashevsky, line coach Bob Flora, another assistant, and now the head coach going into the 61 season, Jerry Burns, along with Whitey Pirro. It would be impossible in the moments available to fully credit the success of Iowa's coach Evashevsky. From the depths of mediocrity, he lifted the state of Iowa's football fortunes to a height it may never reach again. This brilliant strategist gave to the Big Ten the most exciting, high-scoring attack it had ever seen. The Hawkeyes scored over 200 points for 5 consecutive years. No other Big Ten team had ever approached this. In the last 5 years, Evie's Hawkeyes had finished in the top 5 on the national poll 4 of those 5 times. He won 3 Big Ten titles and 2 Rose Bowl championships in the last 5 years and acquired Coach of the Year honors in profusion. This great coach produced an offense that averaged over 350 yards per game for 5 consecutive years and has given Iowa 8 bona fide All-Americans, 4 of them from Maryland State. In his 12 years of coaching, none can compare with the record of points scored and many coaches in the tough Big Ten received their worst defeats at the hands of the Wizard of the Wing T. Brennan of Notre Dame, Parsegan of Northwestern, Doherty of Michigan State, and others felt the sting of the dazzling offensive-minded Hawkeyes. Evie has turned the reins over to Jerry Burns, his successor, but Iowa fans will never forget the slow-gaited walk on the field, the sheepskin coat, and the quiet, decisive action on the sidelines at the games. Evie will make the Hall of Fame, there's no doubt of that. But Iowa fans are more insistent. Evie was the greatest football coach in the country.